So this is my group 3 journal. For this past week, I was a leader. We're an emotional support group, and we were talking about how politics, the political values of family members, and how to have a relationship with those family members and how to work through those dynamics. So I kind of started out with a mindfulness exercise where I brought in chocolate. And there's a point where with Alex, I asked him to put down his notebook, and there's some weird tension thing there. So at the end of the group, we talked about it and what it meant, and he kind of discussed how it was just about his ADHD and how he was putting it down, and it felt like I was kind of bossing him around. Can you stop? But can you just be quiet? Thank you. So yeah, we worked through that process, and then I had an article I had people read, and it discussed different reactions to how to family members and how to navigate your relationship with them. Basically, in the end, it was kind of like if we were to choose our family members, we wouldn't choose our actual family members, and we're kind of forced to have relationships with them. So it kind of left with a big question mark. I noticed with the group, it started, instead of talking about more of people's personal relationships, it was more on a meso or macro level where people were talking about Trump and his politics, which is part of the conversation. But I wanted it to be more about, since it's an emotional support group, people's emotions or conflicts with their family members or close friends. So yeah, I try to redirect it a little bit. There was just a lot of opinions, and I wanted people to feel heard. So there was some side conversations that I had to redirect several times. And we talked about that at the end because we talked about how the group went, what we could do better. And they said the way I interrupted them basically was helpful for them. I was a lot less frustrated in this group, mainly probably because I had control of the group. So I think that's just something I notice in my relationships with people or like group work. I like to have control of things, and I want to dictate how things are and how things kind of are run. So because I ran it, I felt like I had a lot of less stress and feelings towards my group mates. So that's an interesting thing to know. And I also know with groups, when I lead, I can take not an authoritarian role, but I'm more assertive and less likely to be, I guess you could say, more professional. I don't know. But it's just an interesting dynamic of how I changed from like being a group member to being the group leader. And yeah, I think like my attitude coming in to groups is not necessarily the best because I think I have a hard time with some of my group members and just like even the topic of our groups. So I think that's difficult for me. So I think something I want to be working on is having a more open mind going into groups and kind of leaving my frustrations with group members at the door because it's not productive for me. It's not productive for them. So I think, yeah, I want to leave it at the door. It was interesting in class last week when you said we have these feelings towards group members. We don't bring it up. We don't bring up the process. And I started thinking about that a little bit. And I think one of the reasons why I don't is because this might not sound too great, but I just don't. Maybe I don't want to confront those things, and I like just being in my ways of having an attitude and being like, this person frustrates me. This is just how it is. Period. And I don't actually have this intrinsic desire to want to resolve it because it's not it is like a mandated group, and it's not. I think if it was more, like I was going to a support group like this, I'd be more willing to talk about like the tension or feelings towards other group members. I just personally feel like because I have relationships with these people outside of the group, um, it's not. I'm not really motivated to bring up negative feelings towards similarly group members because I think outside of group, me and a particular group member, we've already kind of talked about how we butt heads a little bit. So we kind of already know where we stand to some extent. I just feel like I'm not as vocal about how much they frustrate me because I don't really know how to go about saying you frustrate me without being an ass, basically. So I'm just leaving that at the door for right now, and we only have 3 more groups anyways, and I think I just kind of want to go into it with a more positive attitude and be more open-minded to other people's ways of leading and ways of engaging. um Overall, I don't feel like the group is super like personally constructive. I feel like I've had these conversations, so we've only had 2 groups so far, but like with politics, like I've had the same conversations with people. I wanted to more talk about how like people's personal reactions and more practical ways to handle them differently so it could be somewhat productive, but instead it just was people kind of defending their point of why they're liberal. Not everyone, but just how it's frustrating. And so I think I tried to redirect it with some questions to make it go to that more personal level. One group member, they're very kind of can go off tangent and talk a lot and talk over people. So it was hard to kind of rein that in. And I did want people to be heard. So there's that. So yeah.